Sunday, April 5th, here on the coast of Brazil with Hans Comyn. This is Michael Skye. Welcome to Ronin Radio.
Hello, everyone.
So we have a young man in our circle, I guess, who he's been inquiring lately. Like, I invited him to a grand adventure to come to Brazil. I told him I'd give him work. And so he's 18 years old, just turned 18, never been out on his own. And he's still being, his father's still providing for him, his rent, his school, his food, his everything. So he's dependent on his father for all of that. And he was very, the coronavirus epidemic is going on. He's very excited about the idea of coming down, spending time with two of his mentors, being on the coast of Brazil, having a grand adventure, getting time away from school, learning to provide for himself. It's something that really lights him up. And whenever we start talking about it, he gets really excited. But he's conflicted because as he was thinking of it, because his parents wouldn't allow him to go, he would have to just somehow sneak his passport out of his house and take off without telling him.
Mm.
And he can imagine when he goes, how pissed his parents are going to be. And when he goes back, the conflict that's going to bring. And
maybe never going back, what he was thinking.
Yeah, he mentioned maybe I'd never go back. And yeah, it's obviously a conflict because I'm sure I guess he loves his parents. And they've provided so much for him. And I'm sure they would feel disrespected if he just up and left without talking to him, and concerned for his safety and so on. So we got back on the phone last night, and he mentioned that he'd talked to some men he respects. And one of them said that, Anthony, you're still really young. You haven't really learned to be responsible yet. And so just running away, running from your problems, like this isn't going to do you a lot of good in the long run. You're going to have to learn responsibility. And, the angle of sometimes we have to do what we don't feel like doing is part of growing up. It's part of becoming a man. And Yeah, and I think the other guy encouraged him to talk with his father, which I 100% agree with. If it's your time to make your stand, face that external authority who you fear, face them head on, make a stand for yourself powerfully, so you can have honor, so you can usher in a new domain of your life, which is before I was afraid to confront him and really stand for myself. Now I've confronted him, this great authority. I've stood for myself, and now I'm walking in the world as someone who's daring to face any external authority and stand for myself. It's a completely different reality you're living in once you do something like that.
So what I hear, I'm asking is, one could think that the stand to make is the one against authority, and I'm going, no matter what. And this is my stand. I stand for myself and I'm going. But what I hear in it is that the facing of that external authority, which you want to make a stand against, or, that is more important. To face that external authority that you've been listening to, letting conduct your life, that's a very important part of the making a stand. You face that authority and not just run away from it.
Well, the question is if he could be living if he doesn't face the authority, and it's not about being against the authority necessarily, but the world he's probably living in until he really faces that authority and assumes full responsibility for himself, is if he goes along with authority, he doesn't view himself as fully a man yet, because he's not making his own way, he's not making his own choices, he's living in fear of he won't be supported, so he better do what the external authority wants. But and then he could also not face the authority and run away or rebel, but still he's reacting to his fear of the disapproval or the punishment of the external authority. So in either way, he doesn't get a profound sense of honor and power because he hasn't faced that external authority. So the authority in his life is still that external authority.
Even if he rebels against it or runs away from it.
Yes, which means he's not accepted his own inner authority.
Yes.
And for a young man to come into one's own authority, you need to face the king that's been ruling your life, or the tyrant, or the whatever, and say, now I got this.
So the stand, more than saying no to external authority, is facing authority and then make a choice, which could be the same. As
could be any choice.
Could be any choice.
Keep walking the exact same path, or to go a whole new way.
But it's your choice now.
Yes. And until he does that, he's not going to have much access to honor. Honor being a felt sense of inner authority. So when he's walking out in the world, his head is held high. He's got that inner felt affirmation that he's on the right path, that he's not full of doubt and stress and fear, at least nowhere to the degree that he would be if he was still knew on some level that he was hiding from or running from this greater authority. So that's a great inquiry in itself. In fact, let me I'll share a bit about one of the ways that I did this. I believe I was 20, and I'd already left home, I'd left university, but what I was still grappling with is a righteous, honorable Mormon boy of my age would be on his 2-year mission right now. And here I was, I'm enjoying life, I'm playing with entrepreneurial ideas, but in the back of my mind, like, I've got this cloud hanging over me, this dark cloud. And also I know that the male authorities in my life, the male elders, grandfathers, uncles, fathers, like, they all went on their missions. They all chose the righteous path, and I'm the one who's not. So not only am I imagining that they feel shame about me, I'm kind of living in that world of shame, and I don't want to face the situation head on, because if I look in the mirror, if I really face myself and become conscious, I'll feel that shame. So what I want to do is avoid that, and avoid that, and avoid that, and avoid that. Finally, there came a kind of a crisis point. My father had come to visit me, and he said that, and this is, it's what it is an honor crisis. And it doesn't matter if you're Mormon or not. Like, this is a very real, I submit, it's a very real thing. And guys, men can suffer in this cloud of shame their entire life if they don't confront it and make their stand. And so my father came, and my father he's not like an authoritarian, strongly judging, commanding voice, and he's much softer, and he often really gets present to that sense of honor in himself. He would call it the Spirit or the Holy Spirit, right? And like, he'd come to me and bear to me his testimony of the truth of the church. And he's feeling this because in his world, as I've now come to stand honor, in the face of whatever he might have to face to confront his son who's not following in his footsteps and walking a disobedient path, he's there standing for my eternal life. He's standing for my well-being, my eternal happiness. He's standing for being a witness to the truth of the church, to Heavenly Father. Like, does Heavenly Father exist? And he's like, yes, he does. He's your, so the whole, I came to understand this years later, about honor. But, and when someone's really present to feeling honor, it's like you really get there. It's not they're not against you. You have a real sense that they're standing for you and they're standing for something greater and deeper. And it really is a sense of spiritual authority, actually, which I think many men who cast out were once religious or something. They cast out the church from their life, or they cast religion out of their life. They often cast out the baby with the bathwater, and they're left with this sense of this cloud of shame hanging over them if they didn't really face the conflict and choose powerfully, which is kind of an art form in itself to do, But for example, I have cousins, and I've had some uncles who I knew they were kind of only half in and half out of the church, in that medium range. Like, the honor comes from making your stand and walking away, or making your stand and staying true and being all the way in. It doesn't come from just being undecided, half in and half out. And that's where you get suffering and loss of power. So after my dad had come to visit me, and he told me that, he said, Michael, how you can know the church is true or not, you read the Book of Mormon, which is the account of, it's what the Mormons believe, I guess like the first time perhaps that white people came to North America, or to the Americas, and from the Middle East. So they were Jewish people. And with faith in God, and then started this whole new tribe, if you will, over here. And it's a whole history of that people. And he said, how you can know if the church is true is you read the Book of Mormon, and then you pray to ask God if his church is true. And if you get this warmth in your chest, this sense of peace, and this very kind of affirmative feeling, then this is God saying, yes, it's true.
Say the question again that your father said? If you read the book of...
Yes, and pray with a sincere heart, asking God, your Father in heaven, if his church or this church is true, and if the Book of Mormon is true, whatever. And if you have this feeling in your heart, this sense of peace, this warmth, this expansion, this, what I now call honor, and I look at it in a very, like, it's not owned by any one religion. But for me at the time, my only relationship to this feeling was it's a Mormon thing, or it's at least a spiritual thing.
Were you at that point when he asked that question and he talked about God, did that make sense at that point to you? Like, ask God if this is real? Was that question like...
Here was part of my dilemma is, if I really think clearly about this, I could feel fear of God's judgment. I could feel guilty about questioning and doubting the church, clearly doubting. It's one thing to have this vague doubt and questioning, but if you verbalize it out of your mouth, or even as like a verbal clear thought in your head, Mormons at least can really feel a sense of guilt about that, and a loss of power, and this almost like you're betraying this Heavenly Father and Jesus. And
but at the time you were still thinking within, say, the religious framework that for you a question like ask God if his church is real, that seems like a meaningful quest or a
Well,
meaningful...
I had issues with it.
Uh-huh.
I had issues with it because I reasoned to myself, and I had a roommate at the time, and I talked this out with him, and he was an atheist, and I'm really grateful to him actually, because he just spoke some of these things out very clearly, like, and I don't remember how much of it was his thinking and how much of it was my own, but it's the idea that, well, if you grew up Catholic and praying to a Catholic God and going to a Catholic church and being saved by a Catholic God and all of these things, and this Catholic God is answering your prayers and all this, you're gonna believe that it's true.
Yes.
And here's what I really came to distinguish about the feeling, that if I pray asking this question and I'm thinking affirmatively of it, I'm going to feel good because I'm being loyal to this God who's been loyal to me.
It's acceptance first before inquiry. That's why I'm wondering about that question that your father said. Because if he would ask that to me, I would not know what to do with it. Because I am not accepting the religious framework.
Yes.
So that's interesting. But
and if I'm praying and I'm asking that question, and I entertain some doubtful thoughts, I think about what if it's not true, or maybe it's not, or something. I'm going to start to feel quite naturally more weak.
Yes.
Self-doubting, a sense of guilt even. And this is very distinguishable feelings, and especially inside of the Mormon religion, where we've really been, I don't know about trained, but learned to attune to this feeling inside, because we relate to it as like the Holy Spirit, like this is, in a way, this is God's teacher or messenger or guide, and it brings this feeling inside of your heart, and Mormons guide themselves by this feeling, and in that sense, it's great. It's great, you know, and in a vast amount of cases, it's an incredible guide, you know.
So what happened when your father said that? Did you do it?
So some time passed, and then this cloud is even more like.
So you didn't do what your father said?
Well, hang on. So immediately, no, and so I didn't. But it's still there. I'm still every day waking up to that question and that whatever. The conflict's more real for me now. So my world I'm living in, there's more clouds, gray clouds in the sky, and it's more clear that like I'm kind of going down the wrong path, and the right path is over here. And I like, and to me it's, and I'm starting to verbalize these things to my roommate, stuff like this, and what's one of the things that doesn't make sense to me is that test. Because I reason if I grow up Hindu or Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, and I pray in the affirmative, I'm going to feel this warm feeling inside. And if I pray if I entertain the doubt, I'm going to feel bad inside.
Yeah, two things. It's like Ricky Gervais said. Isn't it funny that 99% of us are born into the right religion? You know, that should give us a clue. But maybe for people listening, I think it would be interesting to tell very shortly what made you go on that path that is in the Mormon church, the bad path, you know, and then have you shame. What made you go down that path that you're on now, you know?
That's where I'm coming to.
Okay.
That's where I'm coming to.
So before where you're at now.
So I'm talking about, at this time, I got this cloud of shame hanging over my head, right? And I feel some sense of freedom because, hey, I'm not having to obey this really kind of straight and narrow path, religious path, and give up 2 years of my prime years of my life, right? 19 to 21, when most guys are out there meeting girls and partying and going to university or maybe starting a business or something like this. That 2 years of sacrifice. And so that was one conflict I had. Like, I don't get that test. That test doesn't seem to make sense to me. That test just seems to be a test which is going to have me stick with the Mormon path.
Right.
But how do you explain that a Catholic would feel different? So that was a rational thing. And so what happened is one day and okay, so another thing that I was grappling with was this issue of consciousness. Like, we have this awareness of self that um, is difficult to understand if you've always been grown up in a religious whatever. Like,
Right.
in the world I grew up in, God had his hand in everything. If something happens, it's God's will. If this blade of grass is growing, everything. And miracles, you can pray for a miracle. And like, it's a very not so ruled by science world. And not all Mormons have this framework, but this is the framework I grew up in. And so the thing was, like, how do you explain this self-consciousness and this ability to think and create and like all this, and we're different than the other animals. And I think this was one of the things that my roommate brought up. He's like, yeah, but you look at an ant, right, on the floor, and it's going about its work, and it's making decisions, and it's and it's tiny, and it's got this sense of direction and some level of consciousness and whatever. And that was really interesting to me. Like, if, like, for example, what is the difference between us and an ant? And how, this very real sense that, like, I'm me, I'm not you, I'm me. Anyway, that was, I don't know how well I'm describing that conflict, but that was one. And then another one was, and this was more a conflict of, like, if I go on the mission and I spend 2 years essentially selling people into the church and converting them to this church, when I come back, I'm going to be really sold on it, because I'm going to be selling it every day for 2 years, bearing my testimony, all these things. And I'm going to feel really bad if I leave then, because I'm going to be so far down along this Mormon path. And here I've converted people to the church, and then I'm going to leave,
Right.
And I'm going to feel, even if I decide it's wrong later, well, I've converted people to something that's not true. And I'm not sure if it's true, but I could see that clearly if I go to this mission training center for a few months, and I get this really heavy kind of training, and then I go for 2 years knocking on doors and all this, that's going to sell me into it. I was clear on that. And so those are kind of my three big
So you see
conflicts.
what your father is asking, you say, well, that's almost like, I first accept this way of this perspective, and then I ask myself, that doesn't seem to make sense. You have these ideas of consciousness, and how is it different with ants and me? And you have this, if I go down this path 2 more years, and then it's going to be really, I'm going to feel really shame. And okay, but what I asked before, and I think it's important, is these are inquiries you have down the path, and it's a path that's already not anymore fully into the religion. You're already stepped, and I'm assuming it didn't come from meeting the atheist or whatever, that some things happened before that made you already like question and like everything that was real.
Well, at that time I'm 20.
Yes.
6 years earlier,
Uh-huh.
my mom's taken me to my friend's house for the weekend.
Uh-huh.
And just before dropping me off, and it's a rainy night and you can't see very far, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, she's like, and I can tell she's kind of like a bit nervous, or like her voice is shaking a bit, and so what she's going to tell me is like really serious. She's like, your father has left, and he won't be coming back. He won't be coming home. And I'm like it's like hearing that, like, the world is really run by lizard people or something. I mean, it's like, what?
Right.
Well, what? Like, that's not even possible in my reality. What? We're like the most kind of upstanding, righteous Mormon family that I know of. We are, reading and memorizing scripture, family prayers every day, personal prayers like 3 times a day, family home evening every Monday night, 4 hours at church on Sunday, Wednesday night, like scouting stuff, and Saturday, same thing. And like, it's all, the whole, everything, you're present, the story of the Mormon people and our ancestors, and they're all Mormon, and we're all on this path, and Christ is coming back, and we got 2 years of food storage prepared. Like everything, my whole reality is this Mormon story. And all of a sudden it's like, scratch the record, and it's like, what?
So that's where 6 years earlier that you started going on a different path.
Yeah, so for much of the last 6 years, I've not been going to church. I've been going astray in some different ways, drinking beer with the buddies, all sorts of things. I'm just laughing at some of the stories I could tell, but but now I'm 20, and it's been at least a few months, if not a year, that if I was a righteous Mormon boy, I would have gone on my mission already. And I had friends who they'd already gone and stuff like this. And I'm not going, And from my whole story, the guys who choose the path of unrighteousness, I was never going to be one of these guys, And this is a key decision point in my life. 19 and you do this. Okay, you don't go to church for, whatever.
Right.
But this decision is a big decision, and it's going to carve out my whole future. I'll forever be either an RM, a returned missionary, which means great wealth. You come back having served your 2-year mission, you have your pick of the young women in the church, You are esteemed by all the older men. You're esteemed by everyone. It's like this path of you get all the blessings, really. Versus, I got on this other path, and I'm going to be one of those guys I look down on my entire life, who's not powerful, who is sinning against God, who's just enjoying these short-term fruits of man's world and living in sin. And so it's like this is a crisis moment,
mm-hmm.
And every day it's kind of building. And so finally, one day, I realized I'm not thinking clearly, and I need to face this head on, kind of. And I said, I'm going to write down my thoughts, and I was scared to do this because to write so clearly is to write these sinful, doubtful thoughts. Even just thinking about another possibility in my world, to me, was very risky. So hours go by, and I'm just every thought that comes up, I'm writing it down, and I'm questioning all these directions, and I can read my thoughts, and I can see my reasoning. And finally, after hours, I was and I'm swallowing now, even thinking about it. It's I can't say that I believe in Mormonism. I can't say that I'm Mormon in that way. I'm not a believer. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not true, but I can say clearly that I'm not that.
Agnostic.
And I don't know why, but I just felt like I have to face God with this, So by this point, I'm the only one in the apartment all day. At this point, the sun's gone down. I go in the kitchen, I turn on the light. I stand under the light. God's up there, right? He's in the direction of up, right? And I look up and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just say it out loud. And this, to me, takes a lot of courage. And I just say it, something to the effect of, knowing what I know now, or whatever, something like this. I'm not a believer in the Mormon church, or I don't believe the church is true. Something like this. And not that I believe it's not, but just I'm not, I can't say I'm Mormon. And then, this was a stand. And this is, you know my work a bit. Vision happens after the stand. And all of a sudden, and this all comes directly from my personal experience, all of a sudden I'm trying to imagine a world where the Mormon church is not true. Because I've never really, I've thought about it a little bit that day, reasoning about it and stuff. But until I made that stand, in it was like I was a different guy in a different world, and I was like, I'm trying to imagine this other world, and I'm thinking, okay, well, whoa, am I Christian? You know? And I thought about it, and I'm still standing there, and I'm like, fuck, by the same reasoning, because I'm like, I'm just gonna follow my own guidance, my own reasoning, being fully honest with myself, just. And so I said that I can't say I'm Christian. I yeah, I don't know if it's true. I can't say that. And then the next thought hits me, because I'm trying to figure out what kind of world am I living in? Who am I? It's like, do I believe in God? And I was like, now I'm like fucking on the edge of like, I've never been this much on the edge of anything before. And then by the same, and this is funny because I'm talking to God, you know. Don't even know if he exists. I'm following the same reasoning. It's just like, I don't know. But it was a stand that I even said that to me in the face of this all-powerful, all-knowing being who can cast me away to hell for all eternity, or bring shit on my path in life, or bless me, or save me, or, you know. So, and then I'm like, I'm trying to imagine what might the world be like if God's not this all-powerful force in the world, and I'm just trying to imagine it, and I remember having this. I'm like looking out the window at this point, and I'm trying to imagine that world, and I notice I'm squinting, like I can't see out the window, and so I go and turn off the light, and then I can see, and it's like this huge metaphor for me, because I was trying to look out, but all I was seeing was a reflection of what I knew, the kitchen, the world I knew. That's all trying to look out. But I couldn't see out until I turned off the light. And I was just like, whoa. And I was like, I want to go explore this world. So I go and open the door, and I start walking down the street, and there's like no cars or anything. And the birds are still singing, and it's a little bit surprising, and it's totally beautiful, you know? I see the stars in the sky, you know? And it's like, I'm in a whole new planet, you know, and it's beautiful. And I'm imagining that there's not even a God, and I'm like, I'm in awe. I can't believe it, and it's whatever. And I come to the end of the road, and then I notice I've got that warm feeling in my heart that my dad talked about, you know. And this was a real puzzle, because it's supposed to be like if you.
It's supposed to be the Holy Spirit.
It's supposed to give confirmation that the church is true. And I've just questioned the church and Jesus and God himself. And I'm feeling this feeling. And so I became super curious about this. And like my life is on hold for the next several years, because I'm fascinated by, well, if the Mormon church isn't true, then what is? What is the truth? And what is my mission if it's not this very clear Mormon mission? And this becomes like an amazing journey that I go on. And what I came to distinguish over time is that this feeling comes, and I started really like paying attention to this feeling and following it. But I noticed that the feeling comes when I make a stand for myself or my people or my values in the face of fear or whatever is there for me to face. And so the facing, yes, it's about courage, but it's also about honesty. So like I just go on this kick, like in my like self-honesty is just giving me so much strength, honor, peace, power, clarity. Like I just want to face everything, you know. And yeah, so that's kind of like the beginning of my honor work, is this very personal experience that, given my old paradigm, my Mormon explanations for the world, it doesn't fit. And that led to me developing the work, and yeah, and I'm, yeah. So
What's interesting to me is, in the whole story, is that an external force pushes you into crisis very early on when you're 14.
Yes.
Like something completely outside of you
Mm-hmm.
pushes you like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And you start the whole thing where you're born into shows cracks now.
Yes.
And the cracks grow bigger over time. And it's from those cracks that you start asking questions, you know? And it's in asking the questions, you know, that you discover new ways, you know? And then the real crucial point after years of like asking questions is when you really go down the rabbit hole of those questions, you know, and you write them down, and then you make a stand, even though you didn't know at the time what it was. But you made a stand. And the stand is one that's driven by facing everything, you know, and following that inner guidance.
Yes.
And because of that stand.
In that moment, what I was doing was being loyal to myself.
Yes.
To my own guidance, coming into integrity, saying yes to my own thoughts. Because what else am I going to guide myself by? Just some external,
Right.
Someone says this. So in a way, it was very self and life affirming. And I feel like honor is just a natural human.
Yes.
That's the feedback that you get when you're coming back to alignment with your own inner guidance.
Well, that's the last element of it that to me is very interesting, is that you then see that feeling used to be before the Holy Spirit. You could still have it outside the religion. And that's where you draw the strength from to go further.
Yes.
You know? Now it's way easier.
Yes.
Now it's easy because if you're wishy-washy in the past 6 years and doubts because it comes with shame and questioning and you don't. But if you see now that because of that stand, you have the same feeling that you would have if you completely in the religion. So you can even more maybe, you know. Now you have the strength. Now when you feel that, you go, okay, now I'm not dependent on the religion to have that. And I have it even more. And the thing that informs it is self-guidance, is an inner voice, not an external authority. So now you have all this power to keep exploring.
And it's and mastery as well, like through years and years and years, not just with myself, but working with people, to them to restore their honor, which is not for me, it's not a concept. It's an experience. It's a feeling that guides them. It's It's a return of their heart-based authority, if you will. That's one way of describing it. But when people reclaim their honor, like a lot of people, they just burst into tears, you know? And it's just like the biggest yes of their whole being to themselves, you know? You can use words like self-love or whatever, but it's just like I've answered, like my body has been, my heart, my everything has been screaming, wake up, look at how you're betraying yourself. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And for years, you don't. And then finally you do, and your whole body just says, thank you, you know, and weeps, you know, and rejoices, you know. So, and to me, you know, honor it's a dangerous force for good. Because you then have the power to enter these realms where the external authorities have said it's wrong if you go here. It's wrong if you think these thoughts. It's wrong if you make this stand. And you then feel power to go even alone. You know, even if it's me standing alone, you have the honor. You have the inner authority to go forward. And so... But for me, I grew up with an experience of this feeling, and then I went years largely without this feeling. And then I reclaimed it. It came back,
Nice.
you know, and then like I hung on to it and I learned about it and I studied it. But I think about a lot of guys today who've maybe never had this deep sense, profound sense of honor, this inner authority.
Yes.
And they don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They have no relationship to it, let alone being able to bring it back when it's gone or notice it when it's gone. Like a lot of guys out there, I think, they can tell when they're suffering, and then when the suffering is reduced or goes away. And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to let me just get back to not suffering, right? Or to what you could call happiness, which is I'm in a state of mind where everything's going good. I have a good life, but you might not have honor. And it's a whole next level of good feeling, inner yes, inner authority, power, clarity.
Is the challenge then this, that, for example, that you needed an external force to start having cracks, and break free, and it took another 6 years for you to be discovering the power of, say, honor?
And just to be clear, for those years, I was not discovering. I was not facing the question.
Exactly.
I was kind of just, I kind of have license now to run around and do whatever the hell I want. Things that might have been sinful behavior before, or not righteous behavior, whatever. I was kind of just enjoying being free. Let me not think about that. But then it was this crisis moment when all my life, I've been thinking I'm going on a mission. Maybe I'll have some years of running around, but I know what a good son of God does. Goes on a mission, makes this grand sacrifice for his people, or for God, or for the church. And so let's come back to this young man that we were talking about as we began this call, Tony, and which is not his real name, but we'll call him Tony. So he hears me invite him to adventure in Brazil, and he's so excited, so lit up by it, Yeah, and I can just go be free, but he's conflicted about this, what might happen with his relationship with his parents. And some of them still wants to go anyway. I'll just be free of it. Maybe I'll never go back, which is kind of like a running away. And I entirely agree with this guy that he talked to, that he respects, who said, you'll just be running away unless you face your father. And my version of this, that's the way to do it. You face, like I faced God. You want to go on that adventure, go wholeheartedly, which means go with honor. And so, and to do that, I'm not saying that he would have to face his father, but if he does, there's much more honor that he can go with. And but if he's never had this experience of inner authority for himself, which he might not, because in his world, if he's grown up with its external authorities guiding my life this whole time, honor only comes when you see yourself at choice and you're clear. I am facing it all, and I'm making a stand. I'm taking full responsibility. That's where the honor comes from. And
that's in my experience, a lot of guys. They even have, when I ask, how are you feeling? They have no training in it.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
So
don't even know what they're feeling.
They don't know what they're feeling, let alone that they can describe honor.
Yes.
Or this inner.
And even more fucked up about their situation is, they don't have a word for it. Like, we don't have a word for it in English. Honor is not used. Very rarely, on occasion, you can find someone describing what they feel as honor, but you really have to search. We just don't use it like that. I've been using it like that the past 20 years, and so there's definitely some amount of people out there using it like that and spreading it a bit. But so the Eskimos, I was told, have something like 20 or 80, some big number of words for snow, to distinguish this kind from this kind. And it's important to know what kind you're about to walk on, of life or death, or to be able to guide yourself in that reality.
The Greeks had 7 for love, So we don't have a...
And to not be able to name honor. And I can show tons of clips, all kinds of people, and they're trying to put words on this feeling. And it's very clear to me, the feeling that they're talking about. If Jordan Peterson's one of them, you can see him in tears and he's feeling honor. Like, I know what it is. And it's interesting, like a lot of guys, especially, I think even more than women, a lot of times, they'll see someone in tears and they'll instantly project onto them as weakness, as, he's feeling like a victim. He's just emoting sadness and powerlessness, and whatever. But I think the most powerful feeling that you can feel in the world is honor. And it's so overwhelming, it also brings the tears.
Beauty is one too, man. I'm telling you.
What? Yeah. Yeah.
I told you earlier this morning too, this may be a side note, but in Dutch and in German now I've seen it too. You get eergevoel, which is, if you translate it, honor feeling or sense of honor.
Sense of honor.
And yeah, that's interesting to me.
Yes. And in English, like you might say, I have a sense of honor, but you might still not distinguish it as a feeling.
Yeah.
So, but I it's interesting you say beauty, because definitely when you represence honor, it is like you have just brought beauty to your whole inner world and being and
Right.
in life. So there's definitely a connection there, but I have had moments.
Sacredness.
Like there's one in morning in Thailand in particular, like 6 a.m, and I'm in this small city in northern Thailand, and I'm walking down the street, and I see these monks, and they're barefoot and they're dressed in orange, and everyone's going around and they're giving their food to the monks, and this act of also bowing and gifting. There's honor in this, right? So there is a component of honor there, but you also see the temples, again, something sacred that is there to honor, to hold sacred. That everything was like so beautiful, and then I went, and I'm walking down this one part of this might have been like after I went for a run, I then went for a walk, I don't remember. But at some point, like I turned around and I looked up and I saw the orange sun that had risen above the temples and the buildings and stuff. I started crying. I had no idea why, but I would connect that to the beauty of what you said. I can't say I've had that many experiences of it, but I know I had that one, and it's, and I think many guys, they notice, you can notice if you're starting to feel something strongly and then move away from it. I've definitely had my share of those, like I'm about to feel something that could overwhelm me, and we're afraid of losing control or whatever. So we move away from that profoundly spiritual experience, or a feeling of honor even. To receive honor, to have someone honor you is uncomfortable, because you start feeling this feeling, and it can be really intense, but it can be a great source of power and inner authority. And if you learn the martial art that I would say goes along with it, I describe the honor work as a martial art for the human mind and spirit. Man, it's so incredibly powerful not to just be able to navigate your own circumstances in life and conflicts.
I mean, we have,
but to bring it forward for others.
Right. I mean, I've been pushing you to bring out the work, because I've had small glimpses of it, and even that was very powerful. I remember the moment in making a stand that I see how important it is for me to be able to provide for the women in my life, and I never thought of it. Like, wow, I really have a profound sense of that. Or when you help me get past my judgment of Zan and honor him, just a moment to see it and feel that is so, it's overwhelming and invigorating.
Yeah.
And it's very, very strong force,
And when you don't have the honor, it's kind of like you can't see a way forward.
No.
And it's as if your soul is looking for a way forward, a way with honor, a pathway with honor and peace. It's because you're suffering, you want to get out, and it's, so the war, the battles are very much an inner thing. And for coming back to this young man, let's call him Tony. You and I were talking the other day on some podcasts that we did, and we were quoting a guy who had a quote about this, that what every man needs and longs for is a beauty to rescue, a war to fight, or a battle to fight, and an adventure to live. And then there's another quote that kind of goes along with it, and it's like, and warriors to fight alongside you and have your back. And this like so relates to my whole reality of what, how I kind of built the honor work out. But I think it's just, these are needs.
Yes.
These are
very spiritual, deep needs.
Yes.
Once we have food and shelter.
Yes. And so Anthony's much more conflicted if he's about to take off to Brazil, leaving his honor behind, right? Like there's still, it doesn't feel quite right to leave. And honor is very much that feeling of this is right. So he's conflicted about that. And it's what I would call an honor conflict. It's not just an inner conflict, it's an honor conflict, an honor crisis.
A question. Would you say that's the conflict in him, that he can't go until he faces, say, his father and can go with honor? Or is he, and maybe it's both, or is he feeling the pull of comfort and image, the society's pull into what's normal to do, and he's making excuses not to answer the call of honor?
Well, if he has no relationship to honor in the first place, it might not even occur to him that that's what's at risk here.
Right.
And so he might simply be looking to do what he wants to do and preserve his image and comfort while doing it, right? But if he does it like that, he won't gain his honor. So this is something that my inner conflict diagram really illuminates. And so you get it's it makes, because a lot of our choices are unconscious. For 6 years between when my dad left home and almost immediately I started going out with my buddies and drinking and whatever, to that point when I'm 20, I'm making all these choices in my life, and I'm not thinking of them that clearly. In fact, it's almost like I just want to do stuff and not think about it, right? And I'm not even thinking that maybe I don't have the power of the Holy Spirit guiding me, or I don't feel good about it, or like it's still like you can live in this world of unconsciousness, and I call it like being asleep, right? Which is we have this way of just, we have this inner conflict between, say, here's this one value that I have, or I feel is right, and here's this other one. They're opposed to each other, and we have this way of settling that unconsciously and automatically that gets us back to comfort, but again and again and again steals our honor, depletes our honor and our power, our inner authority, and we might not even be awake to it, probably don't even realize it. And so part of the challenge is if guys haven't experienced having this authority, they don't even know what's being given up. They don't even know what's being
lost. They think it's I'm not attractive to girls, or I don't know what message I should send, or I would like to travel but I don't have the means to do it, and try to find, like, they have these real issues they're thinking about, but what they're not facing is an inner conflict that's of which all those questions are just symptoms. Is that a good way of saying it?
And the inner conflict is actually what is guiding them. What's guiding them is to be conflicted inside of our consciousness, is to have stress, because it's like you're divided against yourself. This or this. Am I the guy that said I would run in the morning yesterday, or the guy that feels like sleeping today? And that is stressful, to be divided against yourself. And the more that you entertain it, go back and forth, the more stressful it gets. So we've learned ways of just quickly compromising and then rationalizing to make it okay. And the rationalizations begin to form a whole belief system, a whole way of viewing ourselves and the world, to make it easy to not live a courageous life of facing everything, to not live a warrior existence, but to essentially sleepwalk through life. And you and I have had the conversation about knowing versus being awake. There's plenty of people who, like, you can watch this documentary or you can read this thing and think, I'm awake and these other people are asleep. That's very not how I would use it. That's an easy way of having a kind of ego advantage and then going back to sleep.
Right? So So the only way of getting a guy's attention for this, of the inner conflict that they have not been facing and maybe they should be facing, is to show, I'm thinking now, that the way they've been doing things is not getting them the results that they really want. Or in relationships, like you say, it's making things worse.
Well, I would almost never say the two ways that you kind of put that. One is that the only way to do it is this, and another is that they should be doing this, because the only way. The more you understand about how honor works, you realize there's a lot of ways, right? Like, or really any problem and solution. Like, there's myriad ways to, let's say, use the tool or to get it to work. But and then if I'm coming from a place of should, that's generally not an invitation into honor. That's bringing judgment. And then if the guys who should be doing this, if they do what I say they should do, generally what they're doing is just trying to avoid judgment and coming back to a sense of peace and comfort of not having my judgment. So that doesn't invite them onto a path of honor, right? So all this stuff is really subtle, right? But there's a whole art here. There's a whole martial art that can have guys living, growing with a greater and greater sense of authority and honor as a guide in their life. So if we come back to Tony, right? So he's conflicted. Do I stay at school in the U.S. and where I feel like my dad's running everything? I don't necessarily really choosing to be here. It's kind of like I have to be here. So there's no honor in that, and there's no adventure either. But if I go to Brazil, man, at least I'll have adventure, right? And he's not even probably thinking about honor as something to get back or to have for the first time or to keep. And this other man that he got this advice from was telling him that he was speaking to him about responsibility and being a man, and that, you know, as a man, you have to a lot of responsibilities about doing things that you don't feel like doing. And I can very much see, like, if this is a man he looks up to and respects, who's a courageous man, and he's speaking about the Anthony, the path forward for him is to face what he doesn't want to face. That's the difficult thing of taking responsibility and stand for being a man. He's in a way inviting him to honor, right? But what I told what I told Tony last night. What I told Tony last night was that if his option of, if what he's thinking about doing is staying in a school environment that is no call to adventure or honor, and getting a job, putting on a uniform, working as a cashier in an environment that gives him no sense of adventure and no call to honor, then I said, be really wary of that, you know? And I say that it's the elder's responsibility to give the young men a call to both honor and adventure as a beautiful invitation into responsibility, not a sense of you should also become a slave to this honorless and adventureless society or system like I did. Can you see how alive I'm not? Well, this is what you should do.
It's like, can you see how alive I'm not? Well, this is what you should do. We love you. Don't disappoint us. It's like working that job or whatever. What you're trying to point is he's at a turning point, and he's working could very well, even if you think it's temporary, could very well push you down the rabbit hole of the existing system way longer. Like you would go 2 years on your mission, you know.
Yeah,
it's have that effect without the honor.
Yes, it's very much a crisis. It's a very critical point in a young man's life. The years, I would say, between, say, 12 or especially 14 and let's say 21, when he's beginning to individuate himself and think about like okay, I have intelligence to make these choices for my own life. I'm big, I'm strong, like I can do this, but I'm dependent on authority. It's his way of navigating those conflicts with authority, external and internal, that are going to start giving him feedback on who he is as a man and who he's not as a man. And then those conclusions that he makes about himself and the world will then start guiding him for the rest of his life. So it's really dangerous if what he learns is to compromise and it comes up with a bunch of excuses why he has to also be down for a path of suffering instead of living a great adventure and a call to honor. It's a very critical moment, and it's why, like,
it's worse than religion.
When I've told you this story about my youngest brother several times, but when I found out that all the feedback by the adults in his world he was getting at 16, 17 was that he's a bad kid, you know, and then I know my brother and his heart and his intelligence, and I was like, you know, John, get out of there. Come live with me. You have what it takes. You'll be fine, you know. School or no school, don't stay in an environment that's giving you that feedback to yourself. And then I gave him a call to adventure, which is entrepreneurship, you know, in a very beautiful, glorious, empowering way, and to honor as well. Like, it's a great challenge, you know, to face this and stand for being this, you know. And so, and I think that's, like, to the extent that the older men in our world are not walking a path of honor for themselves and living life as a grand adventure. You can still be working a job or be married and have a family. But if you're not constantly choosing this adventure and choosing a path with honor, by your being, you are a very shitty invitation to young men to take on responsibility. And you can tell them to take on responsibility, and they'll look at you and say, and this is what I get? No, thank you. I'll stay home and play video games, where at least I have a sense of being this character on a grand adventure, saving my people, honor and adventure, right? In the video game. Because I can't find it out in the real world, because I haven't been invited to it by my elders. And so I think it's a huge ball that's dropped by a lot of older men in our culture. And and this isn't about this isn't a should thing. It also is a reflection of our own society that things have happened this way. And there's an opportunity for older men to become elders, to become men who really take responsibility for themselves, to live this grand, courageous call to adventure and honor, and then be the invitation to that to the younger men. First of all, forget what you have to say. They're going to look at who you are first. So first be it, and then speak it. But and to the younger men who don't have those older men, here's the beauty worth rescuing. It's your sacred honor. Your sacred honor is worth fighting for and rescuing. Sacred brotherhood, elders, a path of honor, a people worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, a life with adventure. Like, these are the beauties to go rescue first, you know? And it's a grand adventure to go back and get them. And to navigate this adventure, to succeed in this adventure, you'll need some skills. And I would love to teach you some skills that will help you navigate the conflicts, the battles that you'll have to face on this journey to reclaim powerful inner authority and honor. Brotherhood, elders, be a hero for your people.
Adventure.
All of this.
Real romance.
Yes, yes, all of that. So this is what I'm offering with my Ronin work. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it, or the websites or whatever. I'm thinking of like Ronin Dojo, Ronin Academy, these sorts of things. But as a matter of like, for me, like, I feel like honor is a gift that I've been given. It's not created by me. It's very much something that has been given to me, that I've uncovered over time, that I've distinguished as I've tried to hunt for it in my own life and develop mastery of it.
You find technologies to tap into it.
Yes. And there are others as well, like, you know, there's very much these things I'm speaking to honor, brotherhood, whatever, inside of like a religion that really calls to you. And they might have different names for some of these things. But especially if you're not called by a religion, you know, many times you go to a church and you can see men who have, like, they've really become docile and domesticated, and they're not like Jesus was a warrior, you know, standing up in the face of all authority in his time, walking into the temple, throwing things aside. I mean, but like what you often see in modern day churches is versions of men that they've really been tamed to be good, obedient, nice guys who go along with the bureaucratic corporate structure of a lot of these big religions, and to fit nicely inside, and to not dare to tap so deeply into their own inner authority that they might come in conflict with even the religious authorities. So if you have this sense of honor and this call to adventure and everything inside of your church, like some guys, they go and they start their own missions or ministries is what they call it, and they feel called to go to Africa and their whole mission is about feeding people in Africa or starting wells, and it's also they share the gospel there, and it's a call to adventure and it's a call to honor, and I think it's great, you know, like if that's what calls you, fucking go do it. And it's so much better to be living that regardless of the truth or falsehood of any one paradigm.
Right.
And to be living that as an example for young men is great.
So I said this, the religion of conformity, or the religion of compromise, the religion of comfort and image, you know.
Yes.
That's a way worse religion than any other out there, you know.
Yes.
And it's the one that we've been born into.
And what you'll never get there is like salvation, and righteousness, in the sense of like all is right in the world. What you'll get at best is comfort,
right,
and a kind of blissful denial of your own self-betrayal and betrayal of everything most important to you.
You get all the medicine and drugs to deal with the denial of your possibilities, but you won't get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, and you won't claim real inner authority. And it's not just inner authority. People, unless, you know, in this time of the pandemic with coronavirus and economic potential collapse that's coming, people tend not to trust those who don't have a really strong sense of self-trust, of inner authority. And honor, having honor and this surety in your stand in your path is a great way to be trusted by others and become a leader and lead your people, even and especially if that's like through service. But so it's a grand invitation to men, and not just, you know, and I invite the older men as well.
Yeah, if you want to be great for your girlfriends or your wives or your sons, you know, your family,
your brothers,
your tribe, your community,
your
humanity,
for your ancestors, for your future generations, for your heavenly Father, and however you see the world. It's very, you know, the way I view honor in the work. It's independent of your belief system, so you can reclaim your honor and become masterful with honor and in your inner conflicts and conflicts with others, regardless of what team you're playing for, let's say. So
it's been great.
I'll leave one last call to the young men. Don't settle for a path and rationalize it that's not calling you to grand adventure and calling you to honor. And if you don't have that, go find it. Go find an older man or a tribe or a group that gives you the invitation that speaks to your soul, a call to adventure and a call to honor. Start there, because once you have that inner, like, yes, I'm in alignment, I'm doing my part as a man, that's when you can really grow And you may choose a different path in the future or whatever, but I would say start there. And if this call speaks to you, connect with us, connect with me, connect with the Ronin work and tribe I'm going to offer. And if you want it in your path with women, you want to walk in the world with your relations with women. And I know for myself, like when I left the church, everything having to do with shame and nudity and like dating, everything was kind of shameful. I had no path of honor in the world of women. And it's been a grand battle to just discover my own way of honor in the world of women. And yeah, Hans, that's the work that you do. And that's also work we do together. And it's that too itself is an invitation to grand adventure, you know. Whatever it is that you're looking for, a wife, a great girlfriend, to go travel and explore, date beautiful women in foreign lands, you know, whatever it is, you can go on that journey with honor, and the women will love you for it if you can bring honor to your interactions. So yeah, that's also an invitation. And Hans, they can find you at hanscomyn.com.
Yes.
These are our words.